All good. It's all right, man.
Ay, bendito. Mi hijo. Qué guapo.
Gracias, mami.
I invited a guest tonight. Can you get the apartment ready? Oh, maybe put on some music to set the mood? Ah, Naja.
Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of the DualShockers discussion, where today we'll be talking about Insomniac's latest game, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, a spin-off of the sequel to the 2018 game. And today I have not two, but six unique guests with me gathered around from the internet to help me talk about this game and what this game represents to us. Starting with my fellow DualShocker, I of course have Cameron Hawkins. How you doing, Cameron?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about Spider-Man. Excited to talk about Miles Morales and just what that game represents for those in the Black and Latino community.
No, absolutely, and that I know that you specified what your connection towards the character. In terms of this specific one, I mean, how would you say you identify with Miles?
Yeah. So just to clarify, like I am part Black. I'm half Black, half white. I don't have any Hispanic influences or anything like that, but
Everyone loves Selena. That's a lie.
That's true. But I'm part Black, and it's cool that as someone who I recently went on Inside Gaming earlier this year, and while like Miles Morales isn't particularly an original Black character in video games, it's cool that we are getting more Black and Hispanic representation with Miles. So that's exciting, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
No, thank you so much for being here, Cameron. To my right, I'm going to go with Paul Holston. I just want to make sure I say it correctly.
Yeah.
Of course, writer at the True One Project. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's my my independent website, but yeah, I'm basically a independent writer focusing on video games, race, and culture. So that's pretty much my media hub. There, I put my podcast, writing, and a whole bunch of other content. So
of course. Yeah, and of course you have a little one with you, just so everyone sees. We have a seventh member of the podcast.
Yeah, right. Unofficial member. He is knocked out like a light. So,
yeah. So listeners, if you hear him snoring, don't worry, it's a child. It's not.
Yeah, it is. Full disclaimer. His mouth is like 6 inches away from the mic. So if you hear the snore, that's the seventh member.
Okay. And then I think you connect probably pretty directly, I assume, with the character, obviously, for both being Puerto Rican and African American. So it's really great to have that perspective on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And my dad is the one that's African American, and my mom's from Puerto Rico. So like,
wow, okay.
My Puerto Rican side, my mom's originally from Long Island, New York, but my grandfather, he moved from Puerto Rico to New York during the 50s and 60s when there was a big surge of folks from the island moving up to New York trying to, find different opportunities. So it's interesting, like full circle into like this game and where he's at. I'm excited to talk to you guys today. So
no, yeah, and we're gonna be definitely talking about it. So thank you so much for being here. With me again, who we did a pretty successful Crash Bandicoot video. And of course, I'm a huge fan of all of his work at PlayStation Source, at his YouTube channel, and obviously on Twitter. Mr. Kevin Diaz, how you doing, Kevin?
Doing good. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Just first off, thank you for the opportunity. Definitely gracious for it. Really excited to meet everyone here as well. And for some background, I cover PlayStation, of course, on youtube.com/PlayStation Source, all that good stuff. So of course we had to cover this game, absolutely. And it ties directly to me personally because I am half Dominican and half Colombian. So I am all Hispanic, but there's of course, like with Puerto Rican Spanish, like there's a lot of similarities that are definitely apparent there that I picked up on and there's some that are definitely different from that side of the Spanish, but overall, like a lot of parallels there, and I really connected with the more Puerto Rican side, specifically of Miles Morales. So good to see that.
No, absolutely. And then, of course, I've been watching your Road to Miles Morales series on the YouTube channel. And then, obviously, you have been live streaming it. So it's been fun to watch you definitely play and enjoy the game live as you've been doing. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Also, this is a happy surprise for me because if you don't know who me, I'm actually Mario Rivera. I was part of the Kind of Funny group that did the Hispanic Heritage Week, where I wrote a tweet at 4:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden we had a whole week of celebration. And to close out that week, of course, I have the wonderful Gomez from LatinXinGaming. How are you doing? Thank you so much for being here. This is an honor.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So yeah, my name is Elaine Gomez. For those that you don't know, I'm one of the 6 co-founders of LatinXinGaming. So what started off as an independent game developers association group, we stemmed out and became a nonprofit. So we are a community of Latin American identifying game developers, journalists, content creators, there to uplift each other. But my career, I'm a game designer at Eline Media.
No, that's awesome. And again, we didn't really get a chance to talk during that week, but I'm glad that you're here now, and the fact that I got this opportunity to share something with you and then everyone else at Latinos in Gaming. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, not a problem. Oh, and everybody said their like cultural background. So I'm born and raised in Puerto Rico, but I do have Dominican blood. My father is Dominican. So I'm so excited to talk about all the culture, the little like environmental storytelling of like our like little trinkets that we have at home, the food, all of that stuff, music. It's so special that the whole world can get to see something that belongs to us, and that's really special, especially for our country itself, who's gone through so much stuff the last couple of years. It's really nice to get a pride moment amidst all of the chaos that has been going on in our little island.
No, absolutely, and from the game developer's perspective, I'm interested to see what you have for that as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And actually, Grayson Morales, I've actually known you for, I felt like years on Twitter.
Probably, yeah.
From the Kind of Funny group and stuff like that, and like that. But this is the first time I actually got to see you face to face. So yeah, thank you so much. Writer at Twinfinite, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm the features editor over at Twinfinite.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, man. I'm so glad to actually finally have a chance to speak to you. So that's awesome.
Man,
I just gathering people from the internet that I just want to talk to. So
I know I've seen you on Kind of Funny as well, and I've seen your videos on DualShockers, but I just appreciate you bringing me on today. As far as my cultural background goes, I'm actually 100% Puerto Rican. My mom is Puerto Rican. My dad is Puerto Rican. I also have a half younger brother, kid brother, who's like 11 now. He's actually half black and half Puerto Rican. So it's awesome having a video game out there that he can play and be playing as a character that's literally exactly like him, that he can relate to, because I don't think he's ever had that opportunity before. I actually bought the game for him the other day because I know this is something he needed to play. So yeah, I can really relate to that, and I'm excited to talk about all the culture stuff in the game, like she was talking about, and kind of dive into that, So
no, for
happy
sure
to be here.
And I mean, the fact that Miles has now done multiple media and has been lived in for the movie, of course, Spider-Verse, but the fact to actually be him in this game is fantastic. So yeah, that's also a rare perspective. So very, very glad to have you here, and we'll get started. Before I do that, obviously, yes, my name is Mario Rivera. I'm actually half Mexican, Puerto Rican, and I'm also Italian. So I wanted to preface that because people were asking me this about a month ago, and pretty much that how I come in at this, in the same way that Miles leads from Brooklyn to Latin Harlem, is that I have a divide in terms of my relation with being Latino and also being an Italian person, where a lot of that got blocked out because of history of my family. So I wanted to, and what was great about playing this game and obviously being able to be here with you is that getting to experience something not for me technically for the first time. I have been around for 30 years. I've had other opportunities, but it was really nice to have this as a shared moment of seeing people just like seeing themselves on the screen and not understanding what that meant. And I do have some touchstones that I can bring, that I'm tied to that was in this game that I'm very excited to share with everybody. So wanted to at least bring that up as something that I've been wanting to get off my chest for so long. So thank you so much thank you so much for everyone for being here. Before we get started, I do want to say that we will be spoiling probably Spider-Man, the 2018 game, because it's kind of pivotal to start into this one. We might not necessarily spoil Miles Morales, as some of us have not finished the game completely, but have enough time in it that we feel like we can get a good representation of what the character means to us and then what the character means for gaming in general. So I'm very excited to have this conversation. So here we go. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and reach out to Paul just in case he can't get a word in. What are your overall thoughts on the games that you played so far? Because I know you played you said what, 30% was that?
Yeah, I'm about 30% in now.
Okay.
So first off, even before, I'm taking my time with the game personally, just because one, this is my first PlayStation 5 game, so my very first next gen launch. And
I can see in the background right there too.
Yeah, and and honestly, I have not even really the last launch console was a PlayStation 2 for me. So,
wow.
I skipped PlayStation 3, Xbox, I believe Xbox One. So I skipped that generation. I just got back into gaming after I got out the military. But in terms of this game, I knew that as soon as I knew when it was first announced and knew that Miles Morales was going to be the main character, I knew I was going to be immersed right from the get-go. Not just beyond the game, but again, and I say this in my article, that he personally, to me, is the revolutionary character that we needed coming into next generation in terms of representation. Especially with me, it ties directly, the man's is literally my mirror character. If I cosplay, I will be Miles Morales. I might need to get a better fade than him. I'm sort of rocking my Puerto Rican fro right now. But, and it's just, and even the fact that they really taken the time out to get as much detail of, Spanish Harlem in a sense. Not just from Puerto Rican stance, but all the other respective Latin countries that sort of touch here and there. And at the end of the day, it's just great to have a main protagonist. And I say main protagonist because for some games, not all games, but a lot of us that are, whether person of color, we're really big supportive roles. And it's not too many times that, you have a lead character coming in and not only is a superhero, but actually has a story, a personal story that you really as a gamer can really relate to. So that's just, brief. I could talk about it all day, but like I said, there's this kid right here, when he gets older, when he gets that rated T for teen, maybe, got to slide in it. But this is definitely going to be one of those games to where it's hey, let's enjoy this together, as father and son. And, I look forward to the day of him playing that game. Hopefully, he'll beat it faster than me, but,
That's really sweet. We'll see. Time will tell. Cameron, what does Miles Morales mean to you in this game specifically, or were you a fan of the character before?
I mean, I've always kind of just been a Peter Parker guy, just because the movies I grew up. And I know that
Which one's your favorite Spider-Man movie?
This is a controversial opinion, but I think that the Raimi Spider-Man films with Tobey Maguire are
that's fine.
Better than anything. Spider-Verse, I'm not putting in that discussion, but I think Spider-Man 2 is one of the best superhero films, period, let alone the best Spider-Man film. And I, so I really didn't. I knew who Miles Morales was, but I wasn't super big into comic books. I'm more of a DC person when it comes to comic books. So Into the Spider-Verse was kind of my first real exposure to Miles, and again, controversial opinion. I really enjoyed Spider-Verse. I didn't think it was the hottest things ever, but I still really enjoyed it, and I think it does a lot of cool things. But I think the main thing that I got out of Miles Morales, in the game, was kind of just based off of my history. So as someone who is half black, half white, my black side of the family, my dad's side of the family, we're not super well connected because my dad had not great relationships with his parents. Really, it was just kind of my great aunt and my cousin that on my dad's side that I really talked to. While my mom's side is there is a crap ton of people. Didn't want to try and swear there. Crap ton of people. I feel much closer to, the white side of my family. And just growing up in the, I grew up in Henderson, which is a very suburb, a lot of the population there is white, Mormon, that type of thing. I kind of grew up with people saying oh, you're not black enough, or you're not black, because I have a white personality, whatever that means. I'm not stereotypically black that you see in the media, I guess, in media. So in this case, I really liked Miles because he had style, but he's still he's a nerd, you know what I mean? He just wants to have fun, and he wants to do the right thing. And that's, I like to try and see that a part of myself in him. And another thing that like really affected me, just this is more of a personal thing. I wouldn't say it's anything that I think the game was like trying to do in any sense, but my dad unexpectedly passed away earlier this year. So the part in the beginning of the game, this is very early in the game, I'm sure you all got to it, where he's looking through his old dad's records. Like I was really messed up there. Like I cried hard because it's still like relatively fresh. Just like, because I had to go through my dad's things, and I'm actually going down back to my home in Vegas, my dad's old home in Vegas, to like basically clear out the house, and I know that's going to be really rough. So that part really struck a chord with me as well. But I think Miles is a really cool character, especially for like just in superheroes, with how superheroes are so popular and so a part of our media, whether it be movies or TV. Like like how affected people were that weren't even black when Chadwick Boseman died. Like unexpectedly. Like that's the kind of connection that I think that a lot of people have with Miles as well. So.
Well said. I can relate to a lot of the things, obviously, that you're saying when being a mixed race as well as being Italian and being Hispanic, where at my old job, where I worked at a phone store, and we would get Spanish customers, and they would just say, start speaking Spanish, and I would have to say, no habla español. And I was like, what do you mean? Just like,
yeah.
I'm just like, I don't speak Spanish. And it got to the point where I was just so downtrodden on it that I had to lie, and I had to just be like, my dad passed away, and it was a terrible thing I never wanted to say, but it was such an easy turnkey situation of just like trying to avoid having that conversation, because I felt looked down upon so often by my own race, which was so rough. So having the same feeling of you, of not feeling black enough, I can identify that quite a bit. To go on maybe a different note, Elaine, what is Spider-Man specifically, this game or the character or anything that you connect to with Miles?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey and going to New York City a lot because I had family there. So definitely the sense of Navidad, like Christmas is a spirit in Puerto Rico. Like we celebrate Christmas for pretty much like 2 months, like start of November through January. The Christmas trees are up, the lights are up, and it's just a spirit of happiness and joy and celebration. So that was so special for me to see in the game, as well as like the music, the food displayed like was very traditional, like Christmas food, which is really nice. And there's some nuances that were special to me, and like if you're Puerto Rican and grew up on the island, that you would just know. It's like, wow, they took the time to research some special things in our culture. So I don't know if any of you spend time in the hallway of the house on the walls. There's three things really that stood out to me. So one, we have these Vigilante masks. So if you look at the door of the apartment to the left, there's these like masks. There's 3 of them. So Vigilante masks are part of our African and indigenous heritage in Puerto Rico. And there's a big celebration of the Vigilante masks, and people wear them. People make them out of like paper mache and things like that, and they color them all pretty. So that was something special that's like rooted in our culture. If you look right across that art, there's these casitas that they had on the wall. They're little houses, and they're hung. And casitas are special because it's like a dying art form. It's an art that like very old like artisans do, and they sell them in the streets of Old San Juan, and they handcraft them with clay, and they sculpt them and they paint them. So it's like a really special thing that pretty much every household has some type of casita in it, just because it's just a special art from the island. So some people even collect them. So that was nice to see, because I've never seen that anywhere else aside from, like my grandma's house or my aunt's house or my own house. So that was really special. And then the little cookies, I don't know if anybody saw the little cookies all around.
Awesome.
So in different shelves. So our cookies are a national animal. It's a really tiny frog. Like I would say it's the size of maybe a quarter. It's really, really tiny. But at nighttime, when they all come out, they actually sing cookie. That's how you actually hear them. And they're all over the place. Some people hate them because they're really noisy. But it's so special because that's like, it's our national animal. Like, you can only find cookies in Puerto Rico. Now you can find them in Hawaii because somebody brought them over, and now they do not like them in Hawaii. But it's something special. So if you like are Puerto Rican, and like you're seeing these little tiny details, like you see that the dev team really took their time in making sure that it wasn't a stapled cultural theme. Like in some games that you see, it's just like, oh, this character is Mexican, so he has to have a sombrero and he has to hold the caracas, and there's the stereotypes. But with Miles Morales, his Latinidad, his Puerto Rican essence, his mom, his family, like it's intertwined with who he is, and it's intertwined in the environment and the spirit of the game. It's just part of it. So you can say that it's so well done because it was mindful and respectful, and it didn't feel like it was forced on the player to read or experience. It was organic. It was organic to who Miles Morales is. And even when he speaks, he'll say some Spanish words here and there. Like when you pick up the record and in the same room, you can interact with something. He's like, wow, like something about his abuela. He's like, oh, this wallpaper is so abuela, or something like that. So it's true, because like when you're Latina, like you call your grandma and grandpa abuelo or abuela. Like you don't say our grandma and grandpa, grandmother, grandfather. Like it's just their name. They are abuelo, they are abuela. So it was nice to see that too. Because I know we have seen some games that I will not mention that use like Spanish in very, like stereotypical ways. Like, hey, I say, what's up, way? Like, okay, cool. That's great. We don't all speak like that, first of all. But it was nice that it came naturally in his vocabulary and the way that he communicated. It wasn't like he was trying too hard. And I thought that was really great, and it was respectful. And you cannot expect more from a game development studio, that they are respectful to your culture. So that was really, I think it was special to me, and I'm sure it was special to everybody on here and everybody who has been playing.
The fact that you mentioned the cookie thing, actually, that's a story my dad told me, because my dad lived in Puerto Rico for a short period of time, and he was telling me that every night, he would see those little creatures just wandering in their huts and stuff like that, or their places where they were staying, and
they're loud.
Yeah, he was telling me, and I was just like, oh yeah, that sticks out in my mind. So now I got to go back and take a look to find them, because that's actually kind of, that has a touchstone for me that I wasn't expecting. So that's actually.
There was also I spotted a spray painted cookie, like a huge one, on one of the walls, and Miles Morales. Yeah, and I was like,
oh sweet.
Yeah, but I actually didn't notice it inside the apartment, which is funny.
Oh yeah, they're just like little, like if they were like handcrafted, like artisan ones. So like they're in, I think there's 2 or 3 of them. I found one on the shelf and one in the living room, I think. But just hunt for them. It's like environmental storytelling.
No, for sure.
They play somewhere. Should have made that an achievement.
I know.
Find all the cookies.
Find all the cookies.
There's so many Easter eggs within that game, though. It's like and then they even force you to play a new game plus for one, the difficulty mode, but probably for that curiosity of really exploring that New York in that entirety. So
yeah, and a lot of the activities are revolved around it too. Specifically, the activity when you're helping out all of your different neighborhood people, which I loved. They took away the cop thing of Spider Cop, and they made it all about the neighborhood and made it about helping the people around you, which was so great, making that activities. And you are rewarded when you do all of them. You actually get a pretty awesome gold and black suit right in front of a giant mural of Black Lives Matter, which is awesome. So shout out to Insomniac for that. I felt special in a way. This game has such a great way of making little things feel special. And that's why God, I can't believe I deleted it off my system because I platinum and I want to play it again now. But yeah, to round it off, Kevin, how does Miles Morales how's Miles Morales treat you in terms of a character?
So for me, I got a lot of nostalgic feelings, right? And like specifically, it was nostalgia to my core family, right? Because I was born in New York. I'm from Queens, but we moved out when I was 5 years old over here to Arizona. So I didn't spend a lot of time in New York, but I was definitely still raised by New York parents that were Colombian Dominican. So like what happened like, you know, inside my home growing up was definitely like very influenced on the culture, right? But it wasn't like that outside, like with school and everything. And where I lived, it was primarily very much white. You know, like there is a big Mexican population here in Arizona, of course, but like the area that I grew up in was very, very much white, right? So I never really had really close Hispanic friends. You know, few, but not a lot. So like I was never really exposed to that. I would mainly be exposed to that in the home, and it was extremely high end during Christmas. Like definitely much so, like with the food and everything and all that. So having this game show a, you know, Hispanic Christmas in that way and all that, like it really was like it was a weird feeling of like definitely nostalgia for me, where like it's not like, you know, I still have my family, but having it call back to those specific Christmases and those times growing up, it meant a lot to me, and it really hit a lot to me. One like specific thing I want to point out in the apartment, if you guys looked at the kitchen, there's a ton of roosters everywhere in the kitchen, and I was like, that is so like my mom had a billion roosters in the kitchen, you know? So that definitely called out to me. Of course, the food as well. But I think that's what meant the most, was that like this game went beyond, you know, what we dare not say those games names, but you know, those games where they don't do it right, or they aren't, you know, taking the proper care that they should with introducing a culture, you know, into their games and really showing that on display. But I feel like, you know, Insomniac, they did, I feel overall, like across the board, a really, really good job with laying it out. And I feel like they had really great advisors, or they have a great, you know, team over there that knows a thing or two about the, you know, overall culture and what it means to be Puerto Rican or be just Hispanic nonetheless in the modern day. I really think that, you know, they really took the proper care that they needed to. And I think it was really, really heartwarming for me to see. Like at the end of the game, like I'm sure a lot of people here that already beat it were, you know, I'm sure tears were shed. Like I definitely felt a lot at the end moments and everything. And the way the game ends off in terms of the note of representation, like it really meant a lot to me. You know, it really did. And, you know, where in media, we grew up with Peter Parker, shot to Peter Parker, nothing wrong with Peter Parker. But, you know, where at least I feel like I was, you know, I'm so used to seeing a white protagonist in a movie or a video game more specifically as well and stuff like that. And to see someone that is the closest reflection to me and my family as the main character in a game was like so great, and to start off the next generation as well. But it's great. Yeah, I really, really adore this game and kept liking it more and more as I played it. So
no,
definitely good stuff.
No, for sure. Grayson, it is now your task. How does Morales treat you? Other than name.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you guys already mentioned a lot of it, but I've just never seen. Are you laughing because of Morales?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I am Miles Morales, so obviously.
Oh, there we go. I knew it.
Here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Hold on. Here's the thing, though. Are you going to name your kid Miles?
No,
if you have a kid?
Probably not. I don't actually like that name too much
The
for a kid.
perfect opportunity.
We'll see. When I have a kid one day, we'll see if that happens. But no, like I don't think I've ever played a video game where there's a Puerto Rican protagonist. Let alone like someone that's
trying
mixed.
to find one. When I was writing the list of, you know, good and bad examples, I couldn't think of one specifically. So yeah, right.
Probably not. And if there is, it's you know, it's probably you could probably count them on one hand. You know, the times that's happened.
Yeah.
And just the representation that they've done with the Puerto Rican culture was just so cool to see. Like every time I saw something, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then they took it a step further. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And then I saw something else. I'm like, oh, this is like just truly incredible. Especially like some of you mentioned in that apartment scene. as someone who hasn't really been around my family too much the past 2 years, ever since I kind of like moved away for Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that, that whole scene was just like, I don't know, it was like a punch in the chest. It just, I really felt it. It felt so homey, so comfortable, so like such a place where I felt safe and warm and comforted, and the food and his mom and all the friends coming over. It's just very, it's familia, the community. It was just awesome to see that. And Insomniac just did an incredible job with everything, and even like representing other people who are underrepresented.
Yes.
Like we see someone who knows, I guess I'll speak on that later, but the ASL thing, and
Haley.
It's just, and they handle it so well where you're like, oh, they're not going to do this right, and you're like, oh, they nailed it. Like they were able to bring these things into the game and not make it a big deal. It's just like, hey, this person is deaf, but that's not all she is. She's this character and she just happens to be deaf, and it's cool and it's fun. And Miles knows sign language as well. And it's like, they don't make it a big deal. And I just love seeing that. That was just the coolest part. And, the game itself is just really well done too. So it's just all around such a fantastic game,
No, for sure. And then to touch on exactly that, I feel like there's so much actually being represented in the game that I feel is not just lip service. That actually they have a point. They actually are you care about them specifically Haley. She comes up multiple times throughout the game, specifically in the end as well. And I love that character. And it was awesome to have Miles to have that knowledge to be able to speak with her.
Yeah.
And then there's even characters like was it Tio from the bodega?
Yeah.
I'm like, he's cool too. I like
Spider
him
Cat.
as well. Yeah, with the Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man the cat.
That's the underrated character of the whole series, high key.
It is a shame, spoilers for the game, you have to beat the game in order to wear that suit. That's annoying. That's a gripe
But then
against
you
the
can play
game.
through all of New Game Plus with that suit.
That's
because
right.
Why would you use anything else?
That's right. During the cutscenes and everything, it's great.
Because I totally thought after you go the first time that's when you would get the suit, and then like it didn't pop. I was like, wait, hold up, like
No, you gotta read the stats. It's like complete the game.
Yeah, I was
and
like-
this.
oh man,
Gamers read. Imagine.
Oh man. Oh well, that was lovely. Thank you so much for all of that. Let's go ahead and let's just talk about specifically. So we pretty much each had our individual moments in which we felt that was authentic or connected to the experience. There is one section of the game that I think we didn't really mention a lot about. I'm curious what your thoughts are. It's the section with the rally, with the little festival going on. How many people actually reached that section? We all did,
Yeah,
for the most part. What do you feel about that specifically as part of culture? Because funny enough, before the pandemic really hit, I think it was in February, there was actually a festival. Or was it in the summer? It's one of the times of Flat Circle. It was probably last year. But there was a festival that I went to, and it was great to experience that recently and then within this game, because a lot of the stuff they do nail, especially when it comes to the different food places, the trucks, of course. There are certain areas where there's DJs, but in my experience, there was two battling DJs playing house music because they're Chicago. What were some of the things that you saw there that you thought were like pretty low key authentic, or in terms of like, this is great? I mean, if anyone wants to start for this one.
Yeah. So for me, like, as you know, I'm not.
Yeah.
I would like to think, this is just probably from my own perspective as not being part, Latino, that I feel like that it does lean more on the cultural aspects of Hispanic Latino culture than Black culture, which is fine. Like, I don't think that's a negative to the game. But so for me, I didn't really get any of that cultural aspect in that moment. It was more of just a sense of community.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think, like, as someone who lives in Reno, like, Reno is like, they're titled as like the biggest little city because it's like it's a relatively small city, especially compared to like Las Vegas and Henderson, where I grew up. But it's still, it really does feel like a community, and there's so many like festivals and like things that happen in Reno every year, and of a wide variety that like that's like kind of the vibe that I got when that like. I really miss like Food Truck Fridays that we didn't get this year because of COVID and things like that. Like me and my fiance moved to this apartment specifically because we can walk straight to Food Truck Friday because it's always like super hard to find parking and things like that.
Man.
And so it's just like that sense of community that I think that's really important from what I got out of that part of the game.
Yeah, for me, so I'm originally from South Carolina, right? Both my parents are military veterans. So like I said, my mom is Puerto Rican, my dad's black, and they met while they were in the Air Force. So take it from me, I am a Southern African American Puerto Rican. It's a weird combination, but very unique. So like when you talk about like this setting, right? So, growing up, I was raised in the black community. Like my mom was Puerto Rican. I was raised with, I have 3 younger sisters, but we were raised in the African American community. So in South Carolina, I'm from a town outside of Charleston called Summerville. So Summerville in South Carolina, it's very heavily in terms of Mexican population, but not too like Puerto Rican. Some of the other Hispanic ethnicities are sort of sparingly, but Somerville would host, I remember growing up, they would host an annual Hispanic festival at like a water park. So basically like what you see in that neighborhood area leading up to the rally is basically what we as Hispanics in South Carolina would gravitate when it came to that, just because like for me, when I immersed into that space, that's what it instantly reminded me of. Because like a person like me, to where if you're from New York, you're used to that setting on the everyday basis, to where you have someone such as me, where you have the food trucks, you have the authentic food, and then you actually hear other Spanish speaking folks that it's not just like a Mexican dialect or like broken Spanglish like from me. So, but you feel the authenticity. My only thing about that setting was I wish they would have introduced more of the extra personalities. Like, I don't know if you guys play Final Fantasy VII Remake, but sometimes when you walk through certain cities, you sort of like some of the characters actually like exude like their personality, right? And not to say like there's some people that you stop and you interact with, but I would have loved to actually during that time, because it's like that one moment where you walk through. And for the most part, like if you walk in certain areas, it's dead quiet until you like follow the related path. But I would have loved to like actually seen, some of the other Latinx representation that was really within there too. That while it was there on a visual stance, I would have loved to, be able to explore that peripheral, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's some things that you can't, like when you're walking as Spider-Man, sometimes there'll be a person that's just like, hey, high five, and then you can high five them. Or I don't know if you noticed, you can't punch civilians, obviously, but if you do the punch button, he starts dancing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. That was cool.
I did not know that. That's actually really cool.
I didn't know that either, actually.
Yeah,
It's really
he
neat.
starts,
That's really neat.
It's really, really neat, actually. Only
They
because
really chopped it down in terms of violence when it comes to like Spider-Man civilians compared to like the other one, right?
a little bit. Well, supposedly you were not also able to hit civilians, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Even though I feel like a lot of people get electrocuted in this game, like an obscene amount of people.
Definitely.
It's not Venom. It's electricity definitely runs through like New York for real. High electricity bill.
They're all it's being half supplied by Spider-Man. Yeah.
You reminded me of the that whole scene. You do run into you can't talk to the girl from the shelter, and she mentions her girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I was also I was also like, that was also a great like LGBTQ representation right there. I was like, oh, this is cool. Again, like not a big deal. Hey, this is my girlfriend. And Miles is like, yo, what up? And that's awesome. That's what we need more of, honestly.
Yeah. There was something where I saw there was like a festival where they're just like 2 lesbian women selling stuff in the festival, and I was like, oh, that's really sweet too.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
This also just made me miss people and going outside.
Oh
like
my
this
God,
whole
yes.
game. I just like because it just had this sense of community and like all these people dancing and you're eating food together and laughing. I'm like, oh, I want that again. Like,
no, that's why I have that sense memory of that time at that festival, because I'm like, wow, this is the first time in a long time where I was like, oh, there's an actual community and we're dancing. And one DJ's playing Dr. Dre over here, and the other DJ's playing Selena. And I keep bringing Selena because she's primarily my biggest touch.
The last gaming convention I went to was PAX South. That's why I'm wearing this jacket, because like I miss just being around people. Like who knew in February to where we're at today? It's crazy.
No, 1000%. My one takeaway that is a bad misrepresentation at that festival is that there is no one selling T-shirts and there's no one selling Selena T-shirts. That's my last Selena reference, I swear. I noticed that it was a big thing. Really quick, I do want to start. I'm going to switch over to basically the relationships in the game, specifically the paranormal relationships that we do have. specifically Miles with Rio Morales and Miles. What are some of your takeaways with their relationship throughout the game? I know some of us have beaten the game, some of us have not, so some people have maybe seen more. I'm gonna go with Kevin on this. Kevin, without spoiling, what were you feeling the trajectory of that relationship?
Overall, like, I really liked it, and I think they played it off really well. I think there's some cases where, because I, you know, my closest tentpole obviously is me and my mom, right? So like I was trying to, like, you know, see if, okay, the way Rio reacts to certain things, like is that reflective of like what my mom would do, right? And I think that overall they did a very, very good job with that overall. I feel that there's some instances that I'm not gonna bring up where I thought it was like, I feel like you maybe would have reacted a little bit more to some things, and like maybe like maybe potentially could have been angry, and like a Hispanic mom type of angry that's very, very scary, you know what I'm saying? But overall, like, I feel that, you know, in terms of the more like nurturing side of Rio towards Miles, when you couple that with taking into account that, you know, Miles a year ago lost his father, and then you couple that with also like I remember because I recorded a spoiler cast last night, and some of my friends were saying that they felt that Rio was like a little bit like too forgiving of Miles, like not being around a lot and not being at the apartment, whatever. And one of my friends said that, well, maybe it's because, like, you know, she's also running for a council position. I don't think it was mayor, was it? No,
it was council.
City council. Yeah. So like maybe she's, you know, so hung up with that, but also doesn't want to be so overbearing with Miles, and doesn't want a reality where, like, you know, he could feel a sense of like trying to distance himself from his mom if the mom is really overbearing on some cases where Miles is out, you know, for a few hours, takes Miles forever to get coconut milk. You know what I'm saying? Like different stuff like that. And it takes so long that he has to ask Genki to go get it for her and different stuff like that. So that's all I think is a good way of looking at it. But like overall, I think that from a case of a nurturing mother standpoint, I think that they did a really good job. And I think they really have a good relationship. Especially going towards the end of the game. Like, I think that it's a very, very good place where they're at, you know?
And I want to preface, I think that a lot of that relationship also stems from obviously her being a widow at this point, losing her husband and with her son. However, I think she sees a lot of her husband in her son, specifically when it comes to the ending, final moments. There is one moment I do want to just point out because it was my favorite and it reminded me of my aunt. Shout out to Minga, Auntie Minga, where you're swinging and you're having a conversation with your mom, and at this point she's hurt from the bridge explosion part. If you guys she's not deadly hurt. She just has a cast on, and there's something where she's like, "Oh, when you come home, I'll make sure to have what was it? Is it Dulce de Coco?" She says something like that. Yeah. And I just was like, oh, that's just something my Mingo would say. So I was just like, that's so sweet.
That was a good moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to bring up one thing,
because you're swinging around and she just says that. I'm just like, oh yeah, that reminds me.
Like the last thing I think about swinging.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that sounds so nice right now.
Also, really quick, like one more thing too that is really big that I forgot to bring up was when they're talking on the phone and the way they say goodbye to each other, you know, like te quiero mucho, like you know, so my mom is a ER nurse and my mom works nights, right? So I remember vividly every night, no matter what, if all the kids were home and my mom was leaving, we all came down. My mom would say, "En nombre del Padre, del Hijo, Espíritu Santo, Amen." Like, as like the sign off, like, okay, you know, love you, God bless you, Ida, I'm going to work this and that. And that was always the sign off, no matter what, whether if I was leaving or if she was leaving, that was always the sign off. So like having that little sign off in Spanish, the way Rio does with Miles every time, I thought was a really, really good detail that like really kind of like another thing that hit me to my core too. Like, man, like, like that's such that's like a sense of nostalgia, you know, for me. Even though my mom's not gone, like she's still here, but just in that sense of like, I'm not always saying goodbye to her now since I moved out, you know? So yeah, it's stuff like that.
No, for sure. Anybody else have anything about the relationship with Miles and his mother?
I was gonna say too, to write off what was said. Like, I think there's a really fine line between being genuine, right, and being stereotypical. And I think that Insomniac navigated that line well. And even though Rio was not like as Puerto Rican as I would have liked her to be sometimes, because like my mom, like if my mom have called me and be like, hey, can you get this for me? And I wasn't home within the next period of time, she'd definitely call me and give me like, where are you? Like, ¿a dónde tú estás? Mira,
Yeah.
and even like in the scene where she's Nida called her on her phone and she's like talking to her, like I feel like that conversation when it's like two women speaking, like they're loud, like it's just like like their personality comes out, and like they'll exaggerate like and laugh really loud and be very sarcastic and all this stuff. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of that in that phone conversation. So I actually like stood by and like listened to see what was being said, and even things like she says something like "ese hombre está loco," right? But in Puerto Rico, like if we were to say something like that about somebody, like that guy's crazy, we say "ese tipo está loco," you know what I mean? Like we would have used a different word. So I feel like even in the slang, they could have gone a little bit further to see how do Puerto Ricans actually communicate, because Puerto Rican Spanish like is the most different Spanish of them all, because we butcher everything. We don't even pronounce R's. We replace them with L's. We have different weird words that nobody else uses for certain things on a daily basis, the way that we speak. So it would have been nice if there was a bit more of that, where it could have felt like, oh, like for sure this is Puerto Rican. Like when I walk across the street here in not anymore, but in New York City, when I would walk to places, I could easily pick up who were my people, because the accent and the way that we speak is so unique. That's like, oh, you're Puerto Rican, where are you from? You know? And I could tell from like, as well as my other friends, like Colombian, I can pick it up. It's just like the way they just sing when they speak a little bit. Or Dominicans, it's like very like fast and direct. So like, I just wish there was those nuances where like, if there was an NPC that was Dominican, if they could have a little bit of that and more Puerto Rican like slang and things like that, where it would have felt more of that community sense of like, wow, this is little Puerto Rico in New York, because that's exactly what it is. When you go into Spanish Harlem, in the Bronx, into the Queens, into specific areas of Brooklyn, and you know that these communities are heavily Puerto Rican or Dominican or some other Latin American, like that essence of them, it's literally like you're back home. It feels like you're back home, because they bring that with them, like the language and the smells of everything, the music, and it just feels so comfortable. So I would have liked to see that a little bit more. Now I have an issue with the flag, and this is just me, and this is something that I noticed, like being born and raised in Puerto Rico and moving to the United States. There's definitely, and I've talked to so many people about this, there's like this dichotomy between a Puerto Rican or half Puerto Rican or quarter Puerto Rican person who has been born and raised in the United States, and somebody who came from the island. And there's like this, and this is my opinion, by the way, there's like this sense of trying to own your identity and reclaiming that for yourself when you are born in the United States, because you're so othered. You're not like everybody else, but you want to reclaim that for you. And everybody has their own journey of trying to figure out, well, what does being Puerto Rican mean to me? What does being Dominican mean to me? Like, does that mean that I head to toe wear Puerto Rico on my hat and my shirt and I wave the flag around? Because there's that meme that I don't know if you guys have seen, where it's just like, oh, how did you know I was Puerto Rican? And it's the guy that has the Puerto Rico thing on his shirt and everything. And it's super stereotypical, like super stereotypical. But I see that in New York, and it's that reclaiming of like, this is who I am. Even I'm not American, I'm Puerto Rican, because that's where my parents are from. But in Puerto Rico, if you go to like anybody's house, like you will never see our flag hanging on a wall. Like, because it's not something that we do. It's like the equivalent of any of y'all having the American flag hanging on in your living room. Like, it just feels strange. It's not real, you know. So that was like the only thing where I was like, there's a Puerto Rican flag on the wall and in the bathroom and in the festival. It was everywhere, and it's on the banners. I was like, holy shit, y'all.
Overwhelming.
Yes, I was just like, but that's the only point in the game so far when I'm just like, I'm getting drowned in the flag a little bit.
Yeah.
And it would have been nice to just pull back a little bit. Like, we get it. Thank you very much. We love that you're loving our flag too. But that would have been nice if there was a little bit more balance there, because it to a point it was just like, okay, I think that's enough.
It's hard to be mad at that. But I did get to a point where I was like, all right, I get it. He's Puerto Rican, we know.
No, but
now.
to her point, that's what you're saying is literally like how I grew up. Like, you see what I have right behind me, right?
I didn't want to say anything.
But it's like, but you bring up a
Just
great
has like 30
point.
flags in the back.
Hey, look, I got a whole bag of Puerto Rican gear in here. Do not
Oh my
don't play with me.
Oh snap!
I'm serious. But to your point, you make a great point, right? Like, even me being half African American, and that same diaspora struggle we have with folks like African Americans compared to actual Africans from the continent of Africa. It's the same way, like, even with conversations I have with my mother's side, where they're from the mainland or from New York, and even to your point, like, my mom's a New York-Rican, and what you mentioned, Mario, about Rio, like, I didn't see Fabuloso, and honestly, New York-Ricans, they're really direct, like, they're really straight, like, to your face, like, if I don't like you, I'm gonna tell you I don't like you, respectfully. And she was, but I get it, she was nurtured. But to your point, that's the challenge. Even me as an Afro-Latino, that I even still struggle to this day. I just honestly started to really firmly grasp me being an Afro-Latino probably in the last couple years. Because growing up, admittedly, because of my complexion, unfortunately, I'd still get discriminated on, but most people would say, "Oh, he's black, but what else is he?" But, even with me, I'd be embarrassed being around my own family because of me being an Afro-Latino. Well, I barely know any Spanish. I'm from South Carolina, the countryside of South Carolina, for one. And then two, just not being able to have that affirmed upbringing of actually unequivocally understanding my culture. So, for us who are, Puerto Ricans who are born here, to your point, like, I wish I wouldn't have to, have a flag like this, or anytime I go to a festival that I, have like a pin or a bandana. But I think it's just because I think for people like me who are still trying to, like, understand our culture in totality, like, even the flag, like, I know, like, the blue, that's not the true color of the Puerto Rican flag.
Yep.
I didn't even know that until I had to do my own digging. So, like, I'm being hypocritical myself, but at the same time, I think, like, when I saw it in there, yes, I do agree, it was a lot, and I wish I would have saw more Hispanic flags, actually, because New York is not fully Puerto Rican. There's so many other Hispanics in Puerto Rico. Honestly, I can say, like, Dominicans are almost, like, up there in terms of population towards us. So I definitely 100%. Agree, but that's just it. And I think that's, at the end of the day, with hope that whether it's someone from the mainland or someone like me, we play this game, that's the conversations that we need to have within the Latinx diaspora. Is at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're from the States or you're from the mainland, from whatever country you're at, we're all still connected one way or another, but we have to be open to learning about each other's culture, both domestic and international.
Yeah, 100%. And a tidbit about the flag too, because I did my own research to figure out then why are there differences between the diaspora and Puerto Rico specific to the flag. And the history is that when Puerto Rico was claimed by the United States, it was made illegal for anybody to display the Puerto Rican flag for a long time, up until 1958. So, and then changes of the colors happened and all that stuff. And all the folks that wanted to escape that type of censorship, and just in general, all the stuff that was happening in Puerto Rico, they escaped to New York. And that's when they brought the flag, and they made the Young Lords and, like, all these other activist groups to really reclaim, like, their Puerto Ricanness, because it was almost like the American government took that away. So now you can see that. Yeah. So now you can see the differences of why in New York it was so common to have the Puerto Rican flag, because the history was that all these people who were not allowed to have one brought it with them and they celebrated it. And then that's why you see such a big difference with the flag. So it's really interesting to see like how history plays into all of this stuff.
No, for sure.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Me either.
no.
Yeah.
It's a lesson for all of us. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, yeah, one thing that I think that is interesting though is, because I think that this is something that can apply to regardless if you're like specifically like half black, half Latino, but if you're just like a mixed race child, is like, even though Miles is part Hispanic, he definitely appears more black than anything. And with my mom is white, and so she's actually me and her, we were born in England. Like she like straight up born and raised, like I was born there, and I my family's British, but we moved very soon after I was born to America, which is why I have no accent or anything like that. And but like I feel like mothers that have a biracial, multiracial child is a lot more protective and aggressive towards people who like try and kind of like what Elaine was saying about how like not that stereotypical, but like how like you wish that Rio was more direct and aggressive. Like that's how my mom is with like if people mess with me, like if I tweet, like if I like she follows me on social media and stuff like that, but she doesn't really like get in my business or anything like that. She respects what I do. But then if someone's like being confrontational with me, she'll like message me and just be like, do I have to
get a phone call?
Yeah, she's like, who's this person? Like I'm about to F them up, like that type of thing. So I think that's really interesting. And another aspect I want to put into this, like while like I can't really do a one-for-one comparison as my mom is not Latina, but it does put into perspective about my future children, because my fiance is Latina. Like she is she doesn't actually know her full specific ethnicity because her dad was never in the picture, but she does know that he was Hispanic in some aspect. So because of that, like she doesn't know Spanish, and part of me when we first started meeting was I was really hoping that she did know Spanish, because then it would give me a very good reason to learn Spanish. But like this game also has helped me think like, oh, when in general I've thought about it, but even so, like if she like ends up, when we eventually have children, I'm gonna want to learn, like I want us to learn Spanish and try and implement that language into our household, kind of like what Kevin said about like when you say goodbye on the phone, like just like small things to like implement, hey, this is your culture, like this is a part of your culture. Because like for me on my side, like I don't have a whole lot to give in that sense, but I feel like on my fiance's side, like there is stuff there, and I want to try and implement that into our future children's livelihood. So
no, that's great. I do want to just point out two things also. If you notice in the scene, depending on how far you guys get, I'm sorry. If you looked at Miles's notebook, he actually has a bunch of drawings for sketches, and a lot of it is just incorporating the Puerto Rican flag into a new suit. And so that's where his design comes from, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm glad they took the blue out. And then lastly, just a little detail in general. I don't know if you noticed the fundraising for Rio. If you pay attention at the beginning of the game, it's like at the very low level, but by the end of the game, like in between, you go back to the apartment, it keeps growing up and up and up until she reaches her goal. I just wanted to point it out. It's
nice.
Really cute. Every time you go back, just something nice for Rio. I was like, oh, she's reaching her goals, and then she finally gets it. Which is
I got actually two things too, actually. So I picked up the prequel novel, which came out. Yeah, which came out 2 days before the game came out. I'm like, and then with of course what we're living in right now, it didn't even come in until I was done with the game, but it's all good. So I'm reading it. In the first chapter, Miles's abuela, is still living there and like helping them move in. So she starts making café bustelo, and then she starts making tostones too. And I'm like, oh, okay, like Those are good. Yeah. So I'm like, so those we didn't see in the game, but it's nice to know that like even in the novel, you know, they're still sprinkling all that in there.
Is that a good read? Do you recommend picking that up?
I'm only like 3 chapters in, honestly, but so far it's pretty good. Yeah. So far there's some cool stuff in there that are happening that I think definitely speaks more to Miles's ethnicity. There's definitely a lot of stuff that happens to him in there that definitely I think it's going to hit home for you know those that are the same ethnic background as Miles and stuff like that, and what he has to go through in terms of being a new kid in Harlem and figuring all that out. So so far so good. So good. I will let you know personally.
Yeah, I don't know if via Twitter you follow Grayson Morales. I want to pivot, and then we're going to probably end it, but I didn't want to specifically talk to Cameron about the uncle-nephew relationship in this game. Aaron Davis is in this game. You see him early on in a little pamphlet, but you see him as a character. Specifically, the relationship between him, because I want to say that even though majority of this game very much has the Latin influence all over the place, I think that is the one authentic relationship that he has where he could explore the being black with his uncle in terms of like being a person in this world and trying to connect this family. Cameron, I mean, do you have anything that spoke to you about that? Because I know you beat the game. I mean, specifically with that relationship and how they want to reconnect, because he seems to be like a distant person. Or
I just think with that relationship, the main thing, and I don't want I don't think I don't think there's really like any examples of this in the game that like make it. I don't want it to be like sound like a stretch, but like
yes,
I think that their relationship is he just wants Miles to survive as a person, just with just because he cares for him as his nephew. And again, they didn't really touch on it, but probably also just because he is black, like that the things that Aaron went through and growing up, and just how he was kind of rejected from the family, and then his brother becomes a cop, and like, just with the current political environment that we're in, like, it's just like, it's don't want to get into spoilers, but he's like, hey, like, I just want you to survive. And, so just be careful, like, you got to be careful on what you're going to do. And this is really hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, but like, but I think it's just one of those things, like, just, know who you are and know like the unfortunate, like, consequences that you have just because of the color of your skin, like that type of thing. That's like kind of the way I tried to look at it, because again, they didn't go super deep into that relationship as I wanted them to throughout the game. But I do think that it's definitely left open for something later on, like in another entry or whatever it may be. And I do hope that they kind of touch upon that more, but just coming from someone that's just like, oh, this is like just a black on black conversation. Like, this is like what I got out of it personally. I don't know if Paul, like, how far have you gotten to that point?
Yeah, I got to the
part. How you feel?
Yeah, I got to the part where they started to, they know that he's Spider-Man, right? Yeah.
So everyone knows that. So everyone knows that. Cool. Now I feel better. Okay.
Yeah. That's so early on, but I'm there.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just like, hey, like, you're Spider-Man, like, and you're black, and cops like don't fully, like,
they could turn on you in a dime, and which they do. They could turn on you on a dime. And that's
exactly.
Well, they sort of did. I mean, they sort of do. They sort of do. To be honest, turning into even him as a superhero.
He was in the suit though.
Yeah, and he's new. Like, with like, they don't know that the OG Spider-Man is white, but like they I feel like, with Peter working with Yuri, and like in the first game, like there's obviously some sort of connection with the police, which did cause some controversy.
Yes.
some criticism, but like in this one, it's like he's new, he's black, like
and
you
he's
know,
young. He's young.
and he's young,
That's
yeah,
the
and he's
crazy part.
young,
Yeah.
So it's just like that can potentially be problematic. Like maybe not more or less in Harlem, but like he doesn't just protect Harlem; he protects all of New York. So
yeah. And to your point, and just to add, like again, I'm not too deep in the game, but I feel from the point I'm at now is that his uncle's not trying to fill the void of his father, but he's literally probably one of the few last remaining members from his dad's side that still keeps in contact with him, but also can give him that reality. I think for many of us who are African American, but any type of race, but particularly in this case, we sort of either get the direct or indirect talk, and the talk about for some of our other colleagues out here who are non-people of color, they don't have to worry about once you step out the house, into the car, put your driver's license at a certain pace, keep out, if you get pulled over, immediately you put your hands on the wheel, have everything ready. Like it's just small things, right? And so we put in that complex that, hey, you're the superhero, but still don't forget who your true your identity behind the mask. And I think that's what I appreciate about the game so far. Again, I'm only 30% in, but I appreciate that the game really, while he is that superhero on the outside, it sheds beyond that mask to really get to know who Miles Morales is, both as a Latino and African American. But to your point, they could have really, and hopefully, I'm not a comic fiend, so I don't know like the real like in-depth story aspect of his relationship between his uncle and him. But if there is some type of DLC or something, because I can't imagine they're not going to add something in this point.
I wish they will, but no.
I don't think they're going to.
No, I would like it, but I would like them.
Well, hopefully in the movie, or if there is a continuation,
Spider-Verse 2 is coming.
And no spoilers for that one, but there might be more Prowler in that. We don't know. We'll see.
If Disney Plus can, they do these little series, and I would love to see a short story at the very minimum. That'd be awesome.
But and I think another thing that's like kind of important too is that like I feel like just through as like when it comes to black people and black families, that you either have like a giant ass family or you have like one or two people to go off on. You know what I mean? Because again, like I didn't know my dad's parents very well, and they both passed away at a young age, like when I was young. Again, I only have like two people now that my dad's gone, like outside of their like direct family, their own direct family. So like, but then again, on my mom's side, like 30 plus people, and that's not even over exaggerating. And so I think that it's really just, I just really just think it's just the sense of survival. And also I just think that, again, just, kind of what Paul was saying was just, Miles can prove that like anyone can be like a superhero, but also just like anyone can just do the right thing. Like, especially, and I think that's really important with just black people and the stereotypes that are given with black people. Like, just just for an example, like, while ago, like probably a year ago or something, I literally found just a gun, like sitting on like my apartment stoop, just sitting there. And then I like had to call the cops. I'm not going to let like a gun, like just chill there. And so I, called the cops like, hey, there's this random gun on the apartment stoop. And then immediately after I hang up the phone, I'm like, I'm now terrified. Like, I don't know what these cops are going to do when I show them the gun. Or like, I was just like, I'm not touching this thing. I'm just going to show you right where it is. Like 3 or 4 cop cars showed up, like all of them white police officers. And I was just like thinking to myself, like, y'all, like this might be it. Like, that's what black people think of whenever they interact with the police. Like, it's not even, it's just how it is. Like, it's terrifying. But, I got to do the right thing. I'm not going to let random person like find a gun and just potentially like go on a killing spree or anything like that, or like hurt somebody. So I think like there's a lot of a lot of those type of messages, like just from and we see that I feel like with kind of the side characters too, more at the end of the game as well, like the characters that you do those activities for, because they do like kind of have a relatively bigger role at the end of the game, and I think that they they do it while it's not on screen. I think they do a good job of like showing that as well.
Yeah, if I could just do a brief add to his point, and it's even more funny how much I am more tied to him. So my dad is a retired police officer. So he served, an African American police officer, made it all the way up to deputy chief to his respective city.
Hell yeah.
And you talk about like, you have the one side of, trying to figure out how to maneuver with law enforcement. Then you got someone like me who has someone directly tied to law enforcement and just having these hard conversations. Like, I'll be honest, there have been plenty of conversations that I've talked with my dad where I literally at concluding some of those conversations, I just say, F the police, and then we just leave it from there. Not to say I don't disagree, I'm a military veteran, but like, again, it's giving him that perspective. Like, you got the badge, but look on the other side. Like, even with black police officers, some of them are still going through microaggressions within their own field, but then on the other hand, you still have those who look like me that are doing police brutality against not just black folks, but against other ethnicities. So it's like, it's so funny how they sort of tie that cultural aspect of between law enforcement and discrimination, and sort of the unfortunate reality that America, at least in this country, I'm not going to speak for any other country, I don't know, but just the reality of the relationship between law enforcement and African American people of color in certain instances.
And I think they show that in the first game with Miles's dad. Like, they're like, because the thing is that like, like for the cops that are like, that see that it's an issue, like they need to, what are they doing to try and fix it? And I feel like, Miles's dad, they show that like he's trying to like change, he's trying to make change
from the inside.
From the inside. Like, that's what you got to do. Like, if you're saying like, oh yeah, there are issues, but then you're just doing your day-to-day job, I'm like, well, you don't care, then you're complicit. But so you gotta make changes on the inside, and I think that they show that with Miles's dad in Spider-Man PS4 for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to start wrapping up.
On a somber note.
On a somber note. Let's talk about all the great jokes.
Like overall thoughts. Like,
yeah, basically.
Overall thoughts. Yeah. I really enjoy this game. I think I like Miles as a character. I like what the game does. I'd probably say just as a game, I think the first Spider-Man is better, but I still really like this one. And I'm looking forward to there are just some like narrative things that just kind of go away and don't come back. Not like a sequel, it's literally just it doesn't get resolved. I'm like, oh, okay, well, but outside of that, I think it's I think that the combat could have had a little bit more variety compared to the first Spider-Man, but again, this is a smaller experience, so I kind of comes with the territory, I guess. But I think overall, I thought it was a solid game. I'm gonna eventually go back and do some New Game Plus and get that platinum. Like, the only other platinum I do have is Spider-Man PS4, and I definitely plan on getting the platinum for Miles Morales as well. And yeah, so that's how I feel about the game overall.
Yeah. Kevin, what did you feel overall about the game? What are your final thoughts about Miles Morales?
Yeah, definitely. I love the game, honestly. And like, given that it's a short experience, there were certain narrative threads and different storylines that kind of like what has been said, kind of just goes away or is very, very quickly explained in like a single line. It's like, like that could have probably been a little bit more explained in like a fuller game, but understand that this is a short experience. And, I definitely give kudos to Sony and the dev studio that they were able to get this out at launch for PS5 when there are so many people that are beyond gaming looking at these new consoles. Like, I have like an aunt that's trying to get PS5 and she's looking for Miles Morales to get her son, and like different stuff like that. Like, to have a game that is centered around a Hispanic and Black main character be the tentpole of your new hardware for this next generation is like a really big deal, I feel like, and really does speak volumes to the efforts that were put to make this happen. And I'm really fortunate that, in spite of it being a short experience and in spite of some things here and there that I don't love about it, but overall I think it's great. I think it's a great game. I think it, with everything that we've talked about here, it means so much to also be the face of a new generation. Like we always think back to Killzone Shadowfall for like PS4 and different stuff like that, or like Knack, you know what I'm saying? But I know, but like in terms of like looking at launch titles, like it's great that we're gonna look back historically from like Killzone Shadowfall, but like Knack especially,
Right.
But overall, like looking back at like launch titles, it's great that we're gonna have this in terms of like a historical standpoint of this also being really good for inclusivity and to have just a more breadth of the main character. Doesn't have to be a Caucasian male or female, etc. And more specifically a Caucasian male, just definitely that for sure. So I love the game. I definitely implore, if you like Spider-Man PS4, definitely play Miles Morales. And just to end off with the conversation that you I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry about that. But the conversation here involving, Miles being a youthful Hispanic and Black person, and his relationship with, cops in spite of him being Spider-Man is seemingly to be heavily touched on in the novel. So I definitely implore, like, if you kind of want that aspect that wasn't really shown a lot in the game, I don't know if you like reading or not, but definitely the novel seems to be hitting on those things that I think is going to be really cool overall. But great game. I think they did a really, really good job, and I loved it.
Elaine Gomez, what are your thoughts about continuing? Obviously, are you excited for certain aspects of some of the things that we brought up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to finish it and get the full experience of what the story is meant to be and how special it is to people. As a developer and a designer, looking at it, I really see it as it's setting the tone in our community. It's not easy to pitch a game idea that is different than what's the norm. When it comes to making games, us designers and devs don't have as much as a voice as people think we do. So those decisions really come from high up. And if the higher ups can see the success of Miles Morales, if they can see the love and the appreciation that the player community has towards characters like this, that's what's going to cause the ripple effects that we need for them to invest in games with people who are protagonists that look like us, that tell our stories. So I think as a launch title for a next-gen console, I think that it's paving the way. This is my opinion. I really think that it'll pave the way for more titles like it to come out, because it's almost like it's a proof of concept, right? For these other studios. It's like, wow, like it did well, good sales, good gameplay, good reviews, lots of good feedback. Okay, that's great. Now we can adopt that for our own titles. And I would love to see what other studios, big and small, end up coming up with in the next 5 years or so, as this becomes not a one-time situation, like a one-hit wonder type of situation,
Sure.
but it becomes a norm that we have diversity in our characters.
No, well said.
And our stories too.
No, well, 100% well said. Grayson Morales, how about you? Any last final thoughts about Miles Morales?
Yeah, I just really hope they do keep the train rolling with having a character like this. Like Elaine mentioned, I hope it's not like a one-hit wonder, and 5 years from now, like, hey, remember that one time we had a half Puerto Rican, half Black character? Yeah, that's where has that gone? I hope it paves the way for other big AAA blockbuster video games like this. It's also wild to me that it's taking. It took so long for this to happen, but it's happening because of a comic, it's because of Marvel. It's the MCU universe and all this stuff. It's like it's a comic book game.
Written by a white man, by the way.
Yeah, and
Brian
it's
Michael
weird.
Bendis.
It's like that's
Yeah.
it's crazy. We got to this point because of a comic book, and I feel like other games should have been doing this. It should have been a thing already. Is what I'm trying to say, basically. And Marvel has really been paving the way for other characters like that, especially like Kamala Khan.
I was going to
saw
bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
she's
say shout
getting
out
her
to
own
Avengers.
Disney. And she's getting her own
yeah.
Disney Plus series, and they found the actress, and she is a Muslim character as well. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like this company, this even though I'm sure people have a lot of opinions on Disney and that whole conglomerate and everything they own, but hey, they're really pushing things forward with putting out like underrepresented characters, and I'm all here for it. I've been a big Marvel fan ever since the first live action movies were coming out. And I was really into the Spider-Verse. I think that's like the best. That's like the best piece of Spider-Man content out there. I think. I think it's like rated perfectly. I know a lot of people say it's overrated, but I've seen that movie like 5 times now, and I watched it with my brother, and it's just like always a good time. Yeah, this game is fantastic. I think it's a great follow-up to 2018 Spider-Man. I also think it removes a lot of mundane tasks that the first game had that I didn't really enjoy. I really hated that science laboratory, those little puzzles. I really did not like those. I think they just like they halted the game like a screeching halt. And they're fun at first, and you can kind of skip them if you wanted to.
They repurposed some of those stuff and some of the sector, but not as egregious as you're saying. Absolutely, like flying through smog. No.
Yeah, they had some little puzzles here in Miles Morales. But I don't think they ever. Well, catching those birds too. I don't think they
brought that back.
overstayed.
No, they brought that back.
Yeah, that's back.
They brought like little snippets
things
here
like,
and there, and
no one
plopped it in there, which I get. It was already a short game, so they probably wanted to like up that time a little bit more.
Nice.
But they didn't overstay their welcome. I think the puzzles were fine. But yeah, the combat's really fun. I think the Venom attacks are such a great addition. Like using the Venom punch is never not satisfying. Like seeing all the particle effects and the lighting effects and all that is just really stunning and really showcases the power of the PS5.
So
Can we just talk about the loading? These loading screens are incredible. Like I can switch between my new Game Plus save file, my regular save file in like 3 seconds, and I'm like, this is really cool. And it's hard to go back to other PS5 games because they don't load that as fast. Because this game really takes advantage of the hardware, and it's just a stunning visual delight and showcases the power of the PS5, I think, in like all the best ways. And it's just cool. It's so cool to have a game like this at a launch, like you guys mentioned. Like it's incredible.
It's a shining example for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Paul,
Play it.
I played it on my PS4, and it was my system was chugging a little bit.
how does do you
Is it
fast
a base or
travel?
a pro?
No, it's like a base, like
the OG,
first gen PS4.
the triangle shaped one. All
I feel
right.
what you're saying.
Oh man.
Is there a loading screen that's been traveling via the train? Just curious.
In the beginning.
Okay.
And I stayed there for a long time.
Because it's almost like
I was
2
like,
seconds.
what's going
boom.
on?
I'm curious what happens when you fast travel. Like, is it just like the train again, like in the first game?
Like you just,
Or-
A basic
I think you just go up the.
just a loading screen.
Yeah. It's just the loading screen. Like I know that in the train scene, it swaps between views so that you could see the amazing details of things. But on the PS4, I was like, this looks like garbage. The fur doesn't look like fur.
Especially the codes
There's a
that
pretty
code
big
it.
comparison.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay.
And AC Valhalla, it crashed my system.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Your fan. Recipe to your fan, probably.
Yeah, it was about to take flight for real. Like she was gonna be a drone, like moving around my living room.
That's why I had to get a PS5 day one because my PS4 did that. Like, it was so annoying.
Yeah.
It was like.
That hurts because I know Mario's playing Valhalla and it looks incredible on PS5. Like,
Oh, yeah.
oh my god, it looked.
Yeah.
That's no
I'm playing on
good.
Series X, and it's so good.
I bet it looks like. Oh yeah, no, yeah,
So
absolutely.
good.
All right. We'll
One day for me, not anytime soon.
Well, everyone
no
gets
rush.
invited
There's no
back to
rush.
the AC Valhalla game. Because I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about Vikings.
I'm sure there's some Hispanics involved.
Probably not. No, I did.
Probably.
And those Vikings with their Tims and stuff running around.
He just had the flag on his back. He was running around.
how's that representation over there?
That's a whole other episode right there.
I'm gonna have a Nordic professor join us and just be like, "Well, that's not accurate." But
According to the text,
according to the text, there might have been Latinos. I'm not sure.
The manuscripts.
From Spain, Paul.
On that note, and I'll be very brief. Again, I'm 30% in. I'm taking my time with it, honestly, because I want to give an honest review. Like, representation wise, it has, exceeded my expectations. Just again, like, I really feel like I can relate in a lot of aspects, not really the superhero aspect, but Miles Morales, I can relate like directly. Because I'll personally take Black Panther as a superhero over Spider-Man, but that's just me, because that's just Wakanda.
Might get a bit of interest soon, maybe.
But I will say as a whole, to everyone's point, and I've been as a comms PR or aspiring comms PR person trying to get in the industry, I really try to look into data to try to support everything that we already know as people of color related to the industry, but. This is the magic survey that we all reference all the time, right? Like IDGA survey 2009. You talk about race and ethnicity is 81% white European, 7% Hispanic Latinx, 10% East South and Southeast Asians, and 2% Black. So when it comes to games like this, while I'm very, very happy for it to be the next launch, I really look forward to the day where we're in the industry to where this isn't something that we just oh my God, finally. I want it to be a norm. We're in 2020, for sakes. I almost was about to scream a profanity, but I don't stop myself.
We've done so well. I made one shit word.
But in America, the demographic of America and the demographic of gamers, let's just talk consumer base. We're really have exceeded demographic wise compared to the first console. I just please, as we continue to move forward in this next gen, please, game devs, and I know game devs Elaine and all you other fine folks who are doing the groundwork. That's why I really appreciate indies really, really much. But for Main Street folks, for people to say that they don't know the importance of diversity and inclusion at this point, I have to heartily laugh at them. Not in a disrespectful way, but it's look around you for once. Step outside your office. If you work in California or New York, the flagship cities of gaming, really just get a breath of fresh air and really feel the culture around you and try to grasp some of that air into the work that you do. So again, I'm really happy for this game. Again, I'm going to be honest when it comes to the gameplay. Admittedly, spoiler, I've never played the original Spider-Man. I'm sorry. Some of the things that you guys have talked about, but I did buy the Ultimate version, so I do have the remastered, so I'll get back to it.
Well, at least you don't have to get. At least you don't have to begrudgingly accept the new face for Peter Parker, because
that's a big thing.
No, I mean even when I saw that, I was like, man, he's supposed to be the OG, but he looks almost younger than Miles Morales.
Yeah.
That threw me off for a loop, to be honest. But again, I say all this to say, let the work continue. Let's not let this be a one-off, done-off. Let's continue to support indies who have been doing this from the get-go, but also mainstream, those folks who make those executive decisions. Really challenge yourselves in challenging the status quo. Because at the end of the day, the gaming community is diverse, and it's no longer the white cisgender male no more. So I look forward to seeing how next gen goes, and hopefully, the one downside to it also was when it first came out, people had to question was it a really full game? And all you said it's a short game. I wish they would have expounded and made it it's its own main game. But if you're comparing it to what you guys are talking about from the original, I wish they would have really maybe expounded it to really.
As someone who platinum in the game, it's long enough. I'll just say that.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's
fine.
It's fine.
The only platinum game I got is God of War. How I got it? Don't ask me.
A great one. There you go.
Still trying to get that bug snacks platinum.
Rest in peace to that Valkyrie Queen. I hate her with all my heart. On normal at that. On normal.
Rest in peace.
I gotta invite all you guys back just to talk video games in general, because I think that'd be a lot of fun.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so again, thank you so much for watching. This has been a wonderful, wonderful afternoon, night, whatever. You don't know what time it is right now. Gathering of wonderful folks. Yeah, it's 2020 Flat Circle. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank actually Cam specifically for helping me gather some people. There were some people that we had that couldn't make it. Shout out to them. Hopefully we'll be working with them shortly. But again, thank you so much for watching. Kevin, thank you so much. I know that you've reached out to me a lot this year, and I'm glad that we got to collaborate and communicate and actually make some things this year. So thank you so much. And if you want to go ahead and plug away, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so youtube.com/PlayStation Source. We have Road to series, Road to PS5, Road to Miles Morales, where those are dedicated to weekly podcast discussions about the fandom hypeness leading up to these products and these games and these releases. As the lead up, we are going to them. So that, as well as, videos and topics about PlayStation, of course, and Twitter @PSSourceVids, and the Road 2 Series podcast are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all major podcast services as well. So again, but thank you so much for having me on again. Really, really, really appreciate it. And it was a great time meeting all you people as well. Very, very nice to meet new people, that I emphasize with and can really, rock with that. Yeah, so it means a lot. It means a lot.
No, it's a wonderful thing. Elaine, if you please give us a little bit. Can you tell us a little parting gift for us? Where you
parting gift?
Yeah.
Okay. So for our community, LatinXinGaming, like all these discussions that we had here, where not feeling Latino enough, like not speaking Spanish and wanting to explore more of your identity, like we exist to create a community because we understand that that's important and that we want you to feel that you're validated. That's something that we really pride ourselves in. And we have discussions all the time about this stuff. So if you are looking for a community that will uplift you, that will be there to go on that journey with you, if you're trying to figure out your identity and your Latinidad, whether you were born in the United States or anywhere around the world or on mainland, like we're here to be your hub, your familia, if you don't have one. So check us out. We're on Discord. We're on Twitter, Latinos in Gaming. So yeah, that's pretty much my spiel.
Again, I mean, I first saw you during the panel with Greg Miller, Stephen Som, and then Elise, and you said that specifically in that, and it spoke to me directly. So, I said, it's been a pleasure to share, obviously, the Hispanic Heritage Month week with you at Kind of Funny, and of course to be here. So again, thank you so much for being here. Grayson Morales, where can we find you on?
You can find me on Twitter at Grayson Morales, and you could also just find my writing at twinfinite.net. I also have a podcast. I haven't done an episode in a while, but it's called the Positive Players Podcast. There are 10 episodes up now. It's something I started this year. Due to COVID, I pretty much interviewed some cool people I know in the industry, other writers, good friends of mine, and just chatted about how they're dealing with COVID and the lockdown and things like that. It's really cool. It's really cool episodes. So those are available on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and stuff. So you can check that out. There's also a Twitter account for that and Instagram. And yeah, that's me. That's pretty much it.
Paul, where can we find you on the net?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Mario, and thank you everyone for this conversation. Like, this is really heartwarming for me today. Despite my child wanting to have a cameo, but we can look back at it and be like, look, hey, this is where you started in gaming, right? So again, I'm an independent journalist right now, but I'm an aspiring comms PR person trying to get into the industry. I've been doing grassroots work related about 2 to 3 years. All my socials are the same. It's my alias. It's a TRU, the number 1P. Again, I do like opinion writing and column writing on my website. It's thetrueoneproject.com. It's TheeTru, the number 1 project.com. And I also, in the same breath, just started back my podcast because I took a break too because 2020 we just trying to make it. But my podcast, True to the Game Radio, and you can find it on my website. But True to the Game Radio focuses on the intersections of video games, race, and culture. So, and it's basically the same breadth of conversation. I really just try to, it's a little bit of news update informing, but really it's a different angle in terms of culture related to gaming. So not your typical conversations. I dissect, in a conversation such as like voting in gaming that happened a couple weeks ago, one episode, and then veered it towards Miles Morales, and then veered it towards last week, talking about, Black at Bungie, Meg Thee Stallion, rap artist Meg Thee Stallion, collaborate with Mortal Kombat. So it's just, I try to find things that people don't really like seek, but it's like, hey, it's here, So again, you can find me on all socials, True1P, and I will co-sign on LatinXinGaming. I actually met up with a couple of colleagues there when they had their lounge in San Antonio. So ever since then, I'm co-signing this person. I don't know where it'll point. But I'm co-signing Lane and all of them over there. They've been really welcoming as someone who's Afro-Latino, still trying to just find people who look like me in the space, but also still trying to affirm my identity related to being Puerto Rican. So thank you.
Man, I gotta find me an invite to this lounge when I go to PAX this year. Well,
it was lit. Hey.
Oh man.
We had a full house where people dance salsa in the evening.
I can't dance salsa. I give a little two-step in the corner, but
It was so good. It was so good.
That's awesome. And of course, Cameron Hawkins, where can we find you on the net?
You can follow me in my writing at DualShockers. For those that don't know, I've been featured on IGN, GameSpot, Kinda Funny, Inside Gaming, Spawn on Me. And you can follow me on Twitter at Twitch, not at Twitch, that's my Twitch channel. You can follow me on Twitter at the Cinephile Guy, or actually, because I might be changing my social handle soon by the time this comes out. So it's either going to be at the Cinephile Guy or at Cam Final Mix. One of those two by the time I come out.
Change it right now.
I wish I could. I can't really do that. But
the reason because of that is because I applied for a job and I put my current handle on it, and then the next day I thought of my new handle that I've been wanting to change forever.
It's a genius. It's just so genius now because you're a huge Kingdom Hearts fan, and I'm like that. I'm so
huge
sick
Kingdom
that
Hearts
you figured that
out. So it's one of those two by the time this comes out, and
or I changed it.
You can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/ either the Cinephile Guy or Cam Final Mix. It depends on when this comes out. So that's where you'll find me.
Okay. Well, and to wrap it up, of course, I am that Mario Rivera here, the video manager at DualShockers, where I help facilitate and make videos happen. Cam actually just released a video for the channel with our friend Nick. For the Xbox Series S. So that is out. He did a nice little review actually of the device. So really cool video that you guys got to do. I of course did the Spider-Man Miles Morales review here with Logan Moore, who wrote. I did the voiceover and the edit, of course. And then now, this is going to be probably one of my favorite projects that we worked on. So I'm so happy that we were able to do this. You can follow me at Twitter at that Mario Rivera, where you'll start seeing some of my stupid fleets as they go along.
That's a whole other podcast episode, man.
Your fleets, just fleets in general.
Twitter done messed up, baby. I'm gonna mess up that timeline.
It's such a stupid name.
It's so bad.
And it's a really dumb name.
And for the LGBT,
I don't want stories on Twitter. I'm sorry.
Stay for the tweets.
You can watch all my TikToks now on Twitter. Of course, I've also just to be like him, I've also been on IGN, Kind of Funny. Recently, What's Good Games. So recent episodes. So if you want to check out that episode, it was really nice. And again, I want to thank everyone here. This has been so special to be a part of this. And for someone who has felt very distant in the Latino community, these last few months have been some of the most uplifting things that I've gotten to do and be a part of, and to be so welcomed. And I know that from all the followers that I gained from all the things that I've been doing, I noticed the names. I know the Spanish representation now that I have. And again, I'm very, very grateful for it. So again, thank you much to everybody. So till next time, be greater, be yourself.